My name is Dr. Story. I'm going to help you understand why your spine is such a mess and the best way to analyze the spine to understand the mechanics of why you're hurting so much. Now, I'm going to assume you have a general baseline of understanding of the spine so that we can just get into the details about it rather than explaining simple anatomy. However, just to have everyone on the same page, your spine is made up of a series of bones, and what interconnects them are three things: muscles, ligaments, and discs. Discs are the cushions in between the bones, and not all of the vertebrae have a disc. For example, between the skull and the first cervical vertebrae, there is no disc. Between the first cervical vertebrae and the second cervical vertebrae, there is no disc. So you only have ligaments and muscles connecting those two. All other parts of your spine do have a disc. For simplicity, I'm going to use this plastic model as an example of the spine. So these little round things here represent the bones of the spine, and when a person moves their spine, they're supposed to be able to move back and forth like this. You can go forward, you can go backwards. Each individual vertebrae should have a little bit of movement in it, such that when you combine all the bones of the spine, your spine will have tremendous movement. So for example, in my neck, I have 7 cervical vertebrae, cervical meaning the neck, of course, and I can rotate my head back and forth equally from side to side. I could bend my head forward, I can look straight up, I can do all these different movements, side to side movements. And the reason I'm able to do that is because each vertebrae has a little bit of movement in it between the two, which is called a joint. And when you combine all 7 vertebrae together, each of them having a little bit of movement, I get a tremendous amount of movement in my spine. This is normal. This is considered healthy. Now, of course, when we have pain in our spine, we will often go to the doctor, and the doctor will take an x-ray. And I'm talking, when I say doctor, I mean in either a doctor of chiropractic, a doctor of medicine, or a doctor of osteopathy. Those are the people that are doctors that take x-rays of the spine. When they take an x-ray of the spine, you are only going to see certain things in the spine. It is not an all-inclusive examination. So what you will see fractures, you will see the general anatomy of the spine, you will see how well the discs are in terms of their height. You cannot actually see the discs themselves, but you can see the space that the disc should be in. If the space is smaller, we know you have a degenerative process, for example, of the disc, but you really can't see the degenerative process unless you do an MRI, which we're coming to. But as a general rule, we're taking an x-ray of you standing or lying down in one position. You're not moving your spine at all during the x-ray. The next test might be an MRI. Again, an MRI is a static picture where we're taking a very detailed picture of the anatomy of the spine. So with an MRI, we can better visualize ligaments, we can better visualize muscle, and we can better visualize the disc. So now in this particular case, with the spine, we're able to see if a person has, for example, a herniated disc or a bulging disc, and how much water has been lost of the actual disc material. Very often patients will say, I really want to know what's wrong with my spine, so I'm going to get an MRI. And again, the criteria of what constitutes a healthy spine is proper movement. An MRI, again, is a static picture. An analogy would be if you want to see how your car runs and how well the steering wheel turns and how well the car performs when it is functioning, you cannot take a 4K picture of it. That's essentially what an MRI is. An X-ray, by the way, would be more like a Polaroid. So herein lies the problem, is that we are using, we call them advanced medical procedures, but they really are limited medical procedures because they only take a picture of our spine when we're not moving. And again, the criteria is proper movement. So what's the solution? The solution is actually two things, and I have a preference, and I'll tell you what that is. In the research, they have used cinema radiography. And this is where they put a person up and they can actually x-ray the person as the person is moving. That's fascinating. So in other words, you could take a person's spine and have them move their spine like this and actually x-ray them constantly through this range of motion. You could do different ranges of motion. The advantages of this is you can see how well the vertebrae move in their joints, and thus you can check instability, you can check limitations of motions, and that is fascinating to watch. There's one problem. It's cancer. X-rays are a great, inexpensive tool to use. However, because of the ionizing radiation, especially if you're x-raying someone's neck, their thyroid is getting a nice, big, juicy dose of radiation. If you x-ray a person's chest or middle back, their breasts, their adrenal glands are all getting radiation. If you x-ray someone's lower back, their gonads, and again, their adrenal glands are getting radiation. Stop overusing ionizing radiation on our glands. Glands tend to get cancer. So herein lies a problem, is we have a test that gives us the ability to see and visualize instabilities and lack of motion and how to correct these things, but there's a disadvantage. Another method, which is my preferential method, but of course it relies on the skill of the practitioners to use motion palpation. Now, looking at x-rays and seeing how the spine should move, we can get an understanding of how well the joint should move and to what extent they should move. And if we develop the skill and ability of our hands to actually place our hands on a vertebrae and allow that vertebrae to move, then you have gained the benefit of learning how a spine moves without any ionizing radiation. Now, of course, this takes a tremendous amount of skill, and I know a lot of chiropractors have developed this skill. So if you're seeing a chiropractor and they're x-raying you and telling you that there's a bone out of place, or that the MRI shows that there's a bone out of place, they're actually oversimplifying the explanation, because bones do not go out of place. Bones do not shift over here that you can see on an MRI and we adjust them back to normal. What we're doing during an adjustment is we're creating better movement of the joints between the vertebrae. That has been scientifically proven, it's irrefutable, and anyone who doesn't agree with it simply does not know about it. You can disagree, but you're wrong. So we need to develop the skill and ability to use our hands to feel the movements of the spine and know where there are restrictions. If we know where there are restrictions, we can correct those restrictions and restore better motion back into the joints. Now, to complicate matters, each joint at its end range will have what's called a joint play. So what we do is when we examine the spine, we will place our finger, let's say, on this joint right here, and we will have the patient bend over and move, and we will actually feel the movement of the joint. Now, at the end range of the joint, all joints have what's called joint play, and what that means is I can press on it and give a little play into the joint. As an example here, and this is going to be very difficult to see unless you're looking closely, if you look at my finger and look at this joint right here, I am going to do a joint play examination of it, and you will see that if you look really carefully at the joint, there will be some movement. It's a subtle movement, and it's only a couple millimeters. So when we feel a lack of movement or end range joint play, that is an area that needs to be corrected. So I use this tool to show patients what's happening, and you can see the red, and I will show them how their spine normally moves nice and movable, but then the red area does not have enough movement. You can see how it's just stiff and locked up. Now, if they move in the other direction and they move this way, you see how the red is actually moving just fine. But then when we go to the other side and bend this way, it does not bend very well. So in other words, when we do an adjustment, we need to correct the spine so that that red area of the spine can actually bend to the left. And by the way, we call it an adjustment. It's not cracking the bones, it's not cracking the peach, it's not snapping bones. We're not actually adjusting bones, we're adjusting joints. What we're trying to do is restore good motion into the joints. And the best way, most efficient way, the safest way to analyze this lack of motion is through motion palpation. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Any questions you can ask. Today's video sponsor is Bioptimizers. They make a magnesium supplement that is fantastic. 500 milligrams of magnesium, 2 tablets. I take it at night, helps me sleep. It's wonderful. Link down below with the discount code. Check them out. It's really fantastic.